Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime Moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of The Great Ruler based on novel. So let's start. In the central area, the bustling commotion slowly quieted down. Everybody stared in shock at the conclusion of the battle. The outcome was beyond many people's imaginations. Shi Jinqian had actually lost. At this moment, many individuals exchanged glances with one another before turning their gaze towards that slender figure. Their expressions instantly turned serious. As for the people that came from the spiritual road, they secretly let out a sigh of relief. As expected, how could a person who caused that shocking event be weak, even if he had failed to obtain the spiritual energy empowerment? All of them instantly retracted their attitude of superiority. Even if they had exited the spiritual road, it did not represent that they were superior to everyone. There were too many talented geniuses in the world. As for the spiritual road, it was only a trial and it did not mean that they were standing above their peers. If they wished to maintain their position, they would have to remain vigilant and wary. Otherwise, they might be surpassed by others. The other superior students in the central area all stared at the scene with serious expressions. Even Zhu Ling couldn't help but smack his lips. By relying on his strength as a spirit stage middle phase, Mu Chen was able to defeat a person who was a half-step from the heavenly fusion stage. He truly was powerful. Mu Chen. When Xiahao witnessed this scene, his expression instantly changed. He shouted loudly as he charged forward to save Shi Jinqian from Mu Chen's hand. But just when he moved, a slender figure appeared directly in front of him. A black longsword carrying an extraordinary sharp sword aura was only a short distance away from his throat. On the other hand, Mu Chen did not care about Xiao's actions. He only stared at Shi Jinqian, who had a gloomy and surprised expression, and smiled faintly. He did not mutter any words and immediately stabbed towards the symbol on the latter's forehead. Wait! Seeing Mu Chen act without hesitation, Shi Jinqian was completely shocked. He hurriedly shouted and a purple-golden light emerged from the twinkling, purple-golden symbol on his forehead. At the same time, the symbol on his forehead darkened. Mu Chen held onto the purple-golden light that was filled with mysterious spiritual aura and smiled at Shi Jinqian. He said, "Thanks." Shi Jinqian had a gloomy expression as he slowly stood up. Then, he retreated quickly and shouted through the gaps of his teeth. "Mu Chen, I'll never forgive you. You're welcome to try me anytime." Mu Chen chuckled. He immediately directed his gaze away and asked, "Anyone else have a problem with me being here?" The surroundings were completely silent. The people that had originally looked at Mu Chen provocatively instantly turned their gazes away. They did not dare to look directly at him. After all, even someone as powerful as Shi Jinqian was defeated. If they were to face Mu Chen, they would only disgrace themselves. The other superior individuals also did not respond. It was evident that the strength displayed by Mu Chen was enough to make them afraid. If they were to offend him right now, not only would they offend Mu Chen, they would also offend Luo Li as well. Thus, it was apparent that this was not a wise decision. Ha. As expected from the blood calamity Mu Chen. Although we haven't met in the spiritual road, I've at least heard the rumors. Now that I've met you, your reputation is well deserved. King Yang Ling, laughed as he spoke to Mu Chen. His laughter instantly shattered the tense atmosphere and the others started to speak as well. However, it was obvious that they were more careful with their words as if they did not want to offend Mu Chen. Mu Chen also cupped his fist in response to the other individuals. Then, he flicked his finger and sent the purple gold light towards Luo Li. He said, "After you absorb it, you should reach rank 9 symbol." Seeing Mu Chen hand over the rank 8 symbol to Luo Li, they were stunned for a moment. After all, it was quite difficult to raise the symbol to rank 8. Just by hunting heaven-rank spiritual beasts, it would require at least 3 of them before it reached that rank. Therefore, there weren't even 10 individuals that reached rank 8 symbol. On the other side, Luo Li extended her slender hand to grasp onto the purple-golden light. Then, she smiled gently towards Mu Chen before absorbing the purple-golden light into the symbol on her forehead. Everybody immediately turned their gaze towards the sky. In the sky, the purple-gold light shone as it vaguely formed into a massive purple-gold palace. This palace brought forth a shadow as it slowly descended from the skies. Finally, the purple-gold palace slowly descended down and landed on the ground. In the instant that it landed, the earth trembled violently. Is this the Northern Heavens Hall? Many people stared eagerly at the purple gold palace. This was the true gateway to the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. After passing through, they would finally become students of the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. Under numerous gazes, the purple gold palace's heavy, gold-crafted doors slowly opened. A dazzling gold light filled their eyes. The Northern Heavens Hall has opened. The students that have reached rank 4 symbol or above, please enter. Following the opening of the purple gold door, an old and hoarse voice slowly resounded out from within. Mu Chen waved his hand at Luo Li, and the two of them took the lead as they charged forward. In a few seconds, they had appeared before the massive purple gold door as they rushed in. In the instant they passed through the purple gold door, they could feel the symbol on their forehead flash slightly. It was as if something had been scanned. It was apparent that one of the abilities of the palace was to track their symbols. As for the students that did not manage to reach rank 4 symbol, it was evident that they had lost the opportunity to enter through the doors and were forever eliminated from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Just when Mu Chen and the others rushed into the purple gold palace, a brilliant light flashed through their eyes. After they recovered their consciousness, they discovered that they were inside a vast hall. Even by looking around, they did not manage to see the ends of the hall. At this moment, numerous figures emerged within the hall. Soon, the vast and empty hall was completely crowded. Where is this place? Many people looked around, dazed. Is this the interior of the Northern Heavens Hall? How should they enter the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy after entering this location? Little fellows, congratulations for passing the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's examination. Just when everybody was glancing around, lights gathered around and an old figure slowly emerged in midair. The old figure was quite familiar. It was the figure formed with light that had guided Mu Chen and the others on the escort platform. However, the figure standing in front of them wasn't an illusory light figure. Instead, it was his true body. A commotion instantly burst out inside the hall. Many people looked at the crystal card in their hands heatedly. So this little thing was that useful? Mu Chen was also surprised when he heard this. He lowered his head and looked at the spiritual value card in his hand. On the surface, it showed a few numbers, 1,100 points, 1,100 spiritual value points. It seems that the higher the symbol's rank is, the more spiritual value one would obtain. Mu Chen thought for a moment. Then, he looked at the spiritual value card in Luo Li's hand, who was standing beside him. On the surface, there were a few dazzling numbers. 5,000 points. Mu Chen could not stop his mouth from twitching. It was actually that much more than his 5,000 spiritual value points. While Mu Chen was slightly shocked by the numbers displayed on Luo Li's spiritual value card, he glanced around and looked at Yi Qingling's spiritual value card. Although the latter possessed a rank 7 symbol, she only had approximately 800 spiritual value points. As for Mo Ling, Wang Sheng, and the others, they had even less, approximately 100. Thus, Yi Qingling and the others could not help but exclaim loudly when they noticed the dazzling amount of spiritual value points that Luo Li possessed. That amount was probably the highest among everyone here, right? You've suddenly become a rich woman. Mu Chen laughed as he joked around. In response, Luo Li glared at him snappily. All of a sudden, someone asked loudly in the hall, "Old mister, how can we gain more spiritual value points?" When he heard this question, the white-haired old man smiled. It isn't difficult to obtain spiritual value points. In the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, there is a variety of tasks. Once you complete these tasks, you will be able to obtain spiritual value points. You could also obtain them by hunting spiritual beasts and handing over the spiritual beast soul essences to us. Moreover, there are private trades between students which use spiritual value points. You will gradually understand more about this after you enter the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Mu Chen nodded his head slightly. It seemed that there were many methods of obtaining spiritual value points. Then when can we enter the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy? A few individuals could not wait and asked. They were looking forward to seeing the true Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy for a long time. If we follow the normal regulations, you have already qualified to enter. The white-haired old man smiled faintly and said, "However, there's a final stage that needs to be completed. This stage is not for everyone, but only the students that have achieved a rank 7 symbol or above." In the hall, the people who possessed a rank 7 or above symbol were shocked. Then, they stared at the white-haired old man. Was it some sort of test for them? This test isn't necessary. You can choose to give up and there will be no losses. However, the ones that manage to pass this test will receive an additional 5,000 spiritual value points. The white-haired old man chuckled. 5,000 spiritual value points. Numerous people instantly turned eager. As for the ones that failed to reach a rank 7 symbol, they could only stare enviously at the ones that did. May we know what sort of test it is? A person who possessed a rank 7 symbol asked eagerly. It's a duel. However, your opponents are your seniors within the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. The white-haired old man smiled. Seniors from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy? The corner of many people's eyes twitched. They could feel that something terrible was going to happen. This Northern Heavens world has only just summoned the Northern Heavens Hall. It's truly quite slow. As for the other 3 Northern Heavens worlds, their results were obtained a long time ago. Another burly youth spoke out as well. I've heard that those 3 Northern Heavens worlds had a few powerful individuals inside. They even managed to pass through the final challenge. However, it's probably impossible for them to succeed with Sister and here, right? A few people smiled towards the central light pillar where a glamorous woman wearing a red dress emerged. She had a scorchingly attractive body and extremely beautiful looks. However, her face remained cold and heartless, which stopped many from looking at her. Mu Chen stared in surprise at these figures before his eyes finally landed on the girl in red dress. His gaze turned serious as his expression turned solemn. This was because he could sense that the girl was a genuine heavenly fusion stage powerhouse. She was at the same level as Liu Jingshan. And Ran, you'll explain how the following duels will go. The white-haired old man beckoned the girl in red dress forward as he smiled. Yes. The girl named Ran nodded her head slightly, and her beautiful, yet cold eyes stared at everyone at the scene. Her red lips parted slightly as she spoke faintly, newbies that have just arrived, I will represent all the seniors in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy in welcoming you. No matter what sort of background you have, you should behave honestly within the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Here, we will only respect the strong. If you don't have any capabilities, we will look down upon you even if you have a powerful background. Next up, let's talk about the final challenge that you'll face. The ones that possess a rank 7 symbol or above are qualified to challenge us. Of course, you can directly give up. The reward for successfully passing a challenge has already been mentioned by Old Bai. Although the people beside me aren't exceptionally excellent in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy and are only ranked in the 50s of the spirit ranking within the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy against the likes you, they should be quite troublesome to defeat. What is the spirit ranking? Someone asked curiously. It is the lowest ranking within the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. And Ran replied coldly. Many people were dumbfounded. These people, who were half a step away from the Heavenly Fusion stage, could only enter the lowest rankings within the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Newbie. Don't talk about excuses in front of me. I only care about the results. Whether or not you're the weakest out of the 4 Northern Heavens world, you should not say it out with your mouth but prove it with your own strength. And Ran replied coldly. Zhu Ling curled his lips and stopped arguing with her. It was indeed true that this girl's strength was much higher than his own. The other 3 Northern Heavens worlds have all passed the final challenge. Among the ones that passed, there were a few students that achieved the best results. They actually managed to defeat the strongest senior among the students dispatched here. In the hall, a few students were slightly moved. Based on the seniors in front of them, the strongest senior in each respective Northern Heavens world would at least possess the strength of a heavenly fusion stage, right? As newbies, they managed to defeat them? Who are they? King Yang Ling, asked. He was also a prideful individual. Naturally, he would want to know who was more outstanding than him. And Ran glanced at him for a moment and said, Bing Qing, Mu Kuei, and Yang Hong. In the hall, everybody looked at each other. Then, a few students that possess a rank 7 symbol smiled bitterly and retreated backwards. Since all of these seniors possessed the strength of a quasi-heavenly fusion stage, how would it be possible for them to defeat them? It seems that I have to give up on it as well. Yi Qingling smiled helplessly. She was only at the spirit stage initial phase. It was evident that there was no need for her to try this challenge. Mu Chen, Luo Li, good luck. Defeat her. Show her how powerful us rookies are. Yi Qingling smiled. The only one who could challenge Ran was probably Luo Li. As for Mu Chen, he was probably slightly weaker. In the hall, a gap soon emerged. In the end, there were only a dozen students that stood in the front of the group. The selection of opponents will be decided through drawing lots. However, you will still have the right to give up after you draw your lot. And Ran gripped her hand and numerous lights flew out. Upon seeing this, the group below all caught the clump of lights with their hand. When the lights landed, they instantly turned into beams of light before they finally landed on the seniors' bodies. Mu Chen was one of those who caught a clump of light and gently gripped it. The clump of light cracked open and turned into a beam of red light. His line of sight followed the red light and he was instantly stunned. Of course, he wasn't the only one that was dumbfounded. Even the other newbies were shocked. This is because at the end of the Mu Chen's beam of red light was Enran, who had a cold expression. Mu Chen was standing at one end of the red beam while Enran, who had a cold expression, was on the other end. This scene instantly silenced the hall and many people had a strange gaze. Mu Chen had actually been matched with the strongest one among the seniors. Heh? On the side, the Sha family's brothers sneered as if they had seen something fortunate. At the same time, Zhu Ling and the others frowned. Isn't Mu Chen's luck too terrible? He actually selected the trickiest one of the seniors. Judging from the individuals here, the only one who could fight against Enran was probably Luo Li. Although they were quite shocked when Mu Chen defeated Shi Jingtian, Enran was much more powerful than Shi Jingtian. Spirit stage middle phase? In the sky, the dozen seniors were surprised as they stared at Mu Chen. They could not help but chuckle. This is quite interesting. Why is it such a weak newbie? Moreover, isn't he too unlucky? Under numerous gazes, Mu Chen smiled helplessly. He truly had bad luck. Next to Mu Chen, Luo Li stared at Mu Chen with quite a worried expression. She could sense how tricky this senior known as Enran would be. As for Enran, she stared at Mu Chen emotionlessly and said, "You should give up. I don't want to waste any time. Perhaps you can ask the girl beside you. If she is willing to fight against me, I will allow you to exchange with her. In this place, she is the only one that can fight against me." Hearing this, Luo Li lifted her eyebrow for a moment. Then, she looked at Mu Chen hesitantly. Although the boy in front of her was warm and gentle like the sun, he possessed a strong pride deep down inside. Thus, she did not want her actions to hurt his pride, which boy seemed so concerned about it. Mu Chen looked at Luo Li, who was hesitant in speaking. Then, he smiled faintly and gripped onto the fading red beam of light. "If it wasn't for Yang Hong, I wouldn't mind letting you replace me on this. After all, it's best if I can focus on fewer matters." Luo Li nodded slightly. She understood the meaning behind his words. If there was no Yang Hong, he would step back. But since Yang Hong had achieved the best results in another Northern Heavens world. Since Mu Chen had defeated Yang Hong in the spiritual road, the prideful Mu Chen would not allow himself to be any worse off than to Yang Hong. "Good luck," Luo Li said gently. Mu Chen nodded before lifting his head. He smiled at the icy-cold senior known as Enran. "There's no need to exchange. I'll be the one fighting. Please give me your guidance, senior." Enran frowned for a moment as she stared at Mu Chen. Then, she replied coldly, "In order to keep a bit of face, you would challenge an opponent that you know you won't be able to win against. This action is truly foolish. At times, it's best to endure temporarily. The new students this time are truly disappointing." In the hall, many students gnashed their teeth when they heard her demeaning tone. However, they did not dare to talk back. However, Mu Chen smiled gently at the cold, yet beautiful appearance of Enran and replied, "Senior, and allow me to speak bluntly, when I was learning how to endure, perhaps you were still learning how to fall in love with others." At this moment, the hall instantly turned silent. Even the dozen of seniors widened their mouths and stared dumbfounded at the boy below them. Isn't this boy too amazing? He actually dared to provoke Enran? The white-haired old man also smiled as he stared at Mu Chen. However, he did not intervene in the conversation. "What did you say?" Enran's expression was completely cold as she stared at Mu Chen. Her chest heaved slightly, and it was apparent that she was suppressing her rage. Then, she moved and appeared in front of Mu Chen. In that instant, a powerful spiritual energy fluctuation enveloped Mu Chen. "Senior. Everyone has the right to speak at this location. Since you mocked all the students here, we also have the right to speak back at you." Luo Li took half a step forward and blocked the spiritual energy fluctuation emitting from Enran's body. Ran stared ruthlessly at Mu Chen and said, "It's true that everybody has the right to speak. However, they would also have to pay the price for being so defiant. I hope that your strength can match your mouth's abilities. Otherwise, I will truly look down upon you. Thank you, senior, for your reminder." Mu Chen smiled faintly. Since the other side was being so rude and forceful, he did not bother being too polite. "Old Bai, let's begin," Enran said coldly. In the sky, Old Bai nodded his head and said, "Is everybody ready?" While his words faded away, he noticed that nobody rejected. Thus, he waved his sleeves and numerous lights descended. They landed directly and enveloped the seniors, Mu Chen, and the other new students. The light also enveloped Enran. She stared coldly at Mu Chen for a moment before closing her eyes tightly. She had already planned on teaching a lesson to the newbie known as Mu Chen. He dares act this arrogant when he only possessed such pitiful strength. Did he really believe that this place was the weak and powerless spiritual academy that he was in before? Freshman, are you prepared to pay the price of what you've said earlier? An icy cold voice rang out from in front of him. Mu Chen turned his gaze over and noticed that An Ran staring at him coldly. Senior. No man would ever like such a cold woman. Mu Chen smiled helplessly and replied. Even now, you still dare to talk back to me. A cold chill was projected from An Ran's eyes. She bit her teeth angrily. This was the first time she met a person that could make her this angry. Since Senior doesn't like what I'm saying. Mu Chen smiled as his eyes instantly turned emotionless. Let's fight. Once these words were spoken, Mu Chen rushed forward. He had activated the Shadow Spirit step to the limits and turned into numerous afterimages. At the same time, the winds produced from his fingers were like lightning as they stabbed violently towards An Ran. An Ran let out a cold laugh and did not evade Mu Chen's attack. Instead, powerful spiritual energy gushed out of her body like an erupting volcano. With just the spiritual energy impact, she had completely pushed back Mu Chen. The gap between a spirit stage middle phase and an heavenly fusion stage was just too enormous. With only such abilities, you actually dared to act conceited? An Ran's eyes were completely cold as she spoke. Bring out your full strength. Otherwise, you won't have an opportunity to attack again. Vajra Pagoda. Mu Chen did not hesitate at all as a dark black spiritual energy erupted out from his body. As he smacked out with his palm, a dark black hand was formed in the sky. Golden tower engravings appeared and disappeared on the hand as it attempted to suppress An Ran. Against such an opponent, ordinary attacks would be completely useless. He had to use his full strength. This is at least a bit better than before. An Ran stared at the dark black palm, which possessed a powerful spiritual energy suppression, and grunted. Then, she pushed off from the ground and headed directly towards the dark black palm. Spiritual energy erupted from her slender hands and formed into a long spear. It immediately gave off an incredible atmosphere. Spirit Destruction Spear. A cold cry exited An Ran's mouth as she swung her slender arms. The long spear formed by spiritual energy flashed as it became a pillar of light. Afterwards, it tore through the skies and collided heavily against the palm. A powerful spiritual energy shockwave was emitted and instantly distorted the air. Soon after, An Ran's eyes turned cold. Then, An Ran's eyes turned ruthless as spiritual energy erupted out from her body. A dazzling light forcibly collided with the black hand and cracks soon emerged. In the end, the black hand had shattered completely. The Vajra Pagoda that Mu Chen had formed was finally forcibly destroyed by someone else. This was the difference in strength. An Ran moved and stood in the sky. Her cold eyes stared down at Mu Chen. But just when she was about to sneer and mock Mu Chen, her expression suddenly turned serious. This is because she noticed that Mu Chen's body had remained motionless throughout the previous exchange, yet in the sky above, a powerful golden light erupted. As the lights condensed, it formed into a massive and complex diagram array. A spiritual array? A hint of shock finally appeared within An Ran's eyes. She could sense the violent spiritual energy fluctuation emitting from the spiritual array. Judging from the fluctuations, it was already close to a heavenly fusion stage. So this guy was also a rank 2 spiritual array master? No wonder he dared to act this arrogant when he's still at the spirit stage middle phase. An Ran finally understood why Mu Chen had acted the way he did before. However, she only sneered in response to the spiritual array. After all, to fight against a heavenly fusion stage powerhouse would require at least a rank 3 spiritual array master. Right now, Mu Chen was still quite far from it. At this moment, Mu Chen spat out white air from his mouth. His black eyes focused themselves on An Ran as he changed hand seals. Then, a muffled cry resounded out. Dragon Elephant Array. Roar? At this moment, sounds of dragons and elephants resounded out loudly as a powerful spiritual energy surged out. Within the hall, many new students were surprised as they stared at the screen of light where Mu Chen was being shown. Although they weren't in the same place as Mu Chen, they could still sense how powerful the spiritual array activated by Mu Chen was. But even if the spiritual array was powerful, was it truly enough to defeat An Ran, who was at the heavenly fusion stage? This video will end here. Thank you for watching.